Good afternoon. It's Mark Mandelbaum, Chairman of Lanterra Developments, here to welcome you to webcast that's being sponsored today by Lanterra Developments. And we appreciate that you took the time to join us today. We have a very special program with a very special guest coming up momentarily, but I would like to introduce my co-panelists today. First, Barry Fenton, Chairman of Lanterra Development. Barry, longtime friend and partner. Together, we've built Lanterra over the last over 20 years and built many landmark buildings together in Toronto. Also with us today is Lambrou, President of Living Visions, who's been working with us and been marketing our condominiums for almost 20 years. And in the course of doing that, has sold thousands and thousands of units for us. And in that capacity is very well suited to comment on today's program. The title of the program is How COVID Has Affected the Real Estate Development Industry. And we would like to share with you in the next few minutes our thoughts looking forward and presenting to you our special guest who will be coming on momentarily. Barry, how's it going? How's life treating you in the COVID world?
Life is okay, Mark. I always have this saying in the back of my head that says adversity creates opportunity. And there's no question that there's been a very serious challenge over the last several months. But in my life, I've experienced, I'm not going to say hundreds of challenges, but I have had many challenges. And it makes a better person out of yourself. And my responsibility right now as Barry Fenton and as President and CEO of Lanterra, and for a few minutes ago, Mark, you said Chairman, so I was honored to take over your title, is that I have a responsibility to make sure that my family stays safe, that our 190 employees stay safe, that our bankers stay safe, and when I mean safe, that we prove to the world out there that we know what we're doing. And hopefully I'll have an opportunity over the next 20 minutes to half an hour to discuss my thoughts on how I see ourselves weathering through this minor blimp and to get back to the other side of the street and see light. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much. So, Anne, you've been pretty busy in the last couple of months, launching Notting Hill 2, right in the middle of COVID, and managing to do quite well. Tell us how you see the condominium sales industry today in light of COVID.
Well, you brought up Notting Hill, which is a beautiful project that is Lanterra's latest, and we did launch right in the middle of March 15, and we released some units to some of our top real estate brokers, and then we had to shut down. But credit to them and credit to our team. We just acted as though nothing was in our way, and we continued to process the deals, all from remotely, everybody in their own home. You're strictly obeying the whole social distancing. And it was, we've been selling, it's been really good. And we look forward to continue to do more sales with them.
Great work, Anne.
Well,
thank you.
That's really great. I think it's now time to bring on our special guest today. Many of you may not know this, but Barry and our guest has gone back a long, long time, has developed a relationship, and although it was really difficult, has been kind enough to join us today. Let me present to you the Honorable President of the United States, Mr. Donald J. Trump. Mr. President, let me first tell you what an honor it is on behalf of Barry, Chris, myself, and all of us at Lanterra, for you've taken your valuable time, obviously saving the world, to join us today and share with us your insight into the current circumstances.
Thank
President,
you. Hello,
how are you?
everyone. It's fantastic. First off, I want to say hi to Barry, Ann, and Mark. And Mark, I want to thank you for saying Donald J. Trump. Many people think the J is for John. It's actually for genius, and a stable genius at that. And I'm very excited to be on here because I'm doing an absolutely tremendous job. And it's an honor for you and the people watching today to have me here. I'm so excited to be on this Zoom call. My Secret Service had told me there's over 50,000 people on this webinar right now and 20,000 more who couldn't get on because they're stuck outside. But the press, they're going to say it's only a couple of hundred, which is, it's sad. It's all fake news. It's all fake news. As everyone knows, everything's going great here in the U.S. We're reopening, and we're doing it better than any other country, and we're doing it very, very quickly. And I want to let you know, we are socially distancing. We're doing everything right, as you probably have seen on the news. Melania, the First Lady, is she a knockout? Is she incredible? You know, I always say, POTUS needs his FLOTUS. Melania practically invented social distancing. I haven't seen her for months. And when I used to see her, she'd smack my hand. So she was social distancing long before this thing. And of course, as everyone knows, out of all the world leaders, I tested negative for coronavirus. In fact, I was so negative that the doctors said they never saw a negative number so low, so low. They said it was beautifully negative. They were very impressed. It was perfect, perfectly negative, tremendously negative. Actually, they said they never saw the negativity of this test. It was the greatest negativity of a corona test ever. And many, many, many people have said this. So the doctors, not me, I'm not saying this, but the doctors are saying this went straight into the textbook. So I'm very happy to be the most negative on the negativity spectrum. And of course, COVID-19, we've had to stop construction of the border wall between our two tremendous countries. I think, you know, I called it the ice wall. The ice wall, but I'm holding it up. I'm going to hold out on that because you're such a tremendous country, Canada. And I'm practically an expert on Canada. I've been there at least 3-4 times. I know so much about you wonderful people, so many actors, comedians, you know, you people have a great sense of humor. By the way, I love Canada. You know, I mean, someone started a terrible rumor that I didn't love Canada. I love Canada. It is like another country up there. It's like another country. And, you know, and in the food, let's go out for Canadian. I say that all the time. Here at the White House. I mean, you people have your own type of bacon. That's incredible. I love bacon. I love bacon on burgers. Barry knows that. And the best thing is you look like us. You sound like us. You eat the same food as us. That crazy, weird food from, you know, other countries. And after meeting tens of thousands of Canadians, I've come to realize a Canadian is just an unarmed American with free healthcare and a more optimistic, nicer attitude. Canada is like the US's attic. You forget it's up there, but when you go up, you're like, wow, look at all this great stuff. It's beautiful up here. It's really, really incredible. Great stuff like Toronto. Toronto is French. It's French. No one talks about that. But it means plenty. Plenty. Did you know that? I just found that out. No one ever mentions it. But no one wants to name a town Plenty because it sounds crass. And believe me, I know crass. No one knows crass the way I know crass. Believe me. But you're doing great up there. You've got that young, very inexperienced leader, Trudeau. I think he's 22, 23, you know, very inexperienced. Melania says he's handsome. I don't see it. I'm sorry. Doug Ford. There's a handsome guy. Doug Ford is a handsome guy, and he has the added benefit of looking like a heavy me. And I also know there's many, many pro-Trump Canadians, which I love, and that is why I'm so honored to be on this call, especially for this amazing, amazing company, Lanterra. You know what? Your properties, I have to say, honestly, these are fantastic properties. You have every amenity you can think of at your buildings. They're so well thought out. Every single detail, every architectural detail, every amenity detail, everything you do is perfect. It's almost like you're me. Maybe we should, you know, it looks like a Trump property. Maybe we should do something where we name some of the property. I think we could do that. We'd work out a tremendous deal. Absolutely. But I want to just say once again, I'm so happy to be on this call with you today. Things are moving. And Barry, once this is all over, you and me, we're going to go out for burgers with Canadian bacon. And at some point, I'd really like to talk to you offline because you could come down and be in the White House. You do a tremendous, or you know what? Even better, join the Trump organization. We have so many properties in development, and you would do such a fantastic job. Such a fantastic job, I have to tell you.
Mr.
All right, so
President, I
Mr.
just want to say
President,
one thing. Sorry, Mark, just before we get going, I know I was going to wait till the end, but since he talked about the fact that he and I will go out after after all of this passes by, so I decided to buy on behalf of Mark and I maple syrup. It's called Clorex, and we
Wow,
use that maple
that's
syrup in
tremendous.
Canada all the time, Mr.
I know
President.
maple syrup's big. It's big business up there.
It's
I never saw that
fantastic.
brand
It's
before.
beautiful.
all right.
It's
Beautiful.
incredible. It's incredible. You know, Barry, I never realized how much you look like Mr. Wonderful. You really look like Mr. Wonderful.
That's what people say.
You do.
Ask my
You do.
wife,
You're
Sylvia.
nicer. You're nicer. You're nicer.
Okay,
All
Mark.
right. We have a lot of folks listening to this, particularly from Canada, and they really have a very strong interest to hear what you have to say. So I know your time is precious, but there are a lot of important things going on. First of all, I'm not sure who's throwing more money at this, you or Trudeau, but you know, you've been working on a deficit and now you've been spending money like drunken sailors. How in the world are you going to make sure your deficit behaves and that we don't have runaway inflation?
Well, first of all, there's a huge difference between hold on. Mike Pompeo's trying to call me. There's a huge difference between Canada and the US. And the mere fact is that you have 38 million people. We have 340 million people. So we have a much bigger tax base. And honestly, we have a lot more money. And that's why we're pushing out as much money to big businesses, small businesses, and to the American people, because we have enough to cover it over this period of time. And like I said, things are starting to reopen. Everything, all of these economic plans that we put in place under Steve Mnuchin, the Secretary of the Treasury, have been working. They have been working. And these companies are going to be afloat.
Okay, but Mr. President, you've been priding yourself on the record low levels of low unemployment.
Correct.
And you've done that through your trade policies, foreign countries. And right now we're scratching levels that we haven't seen since the Depression. How are you going to get these folks back to work?
Well, the fact of the matter is, this isn't like the Great Depression. This isn't like anything else we've seen before. Everyone is ready to go back to work. The jobs are ready to open. The restaurants are ready to open. The bowling alley, you know, whatever you want to, whatever business, people want to get on planes and fly again. The thing is, this is different. Everything's pent up. We have pent up demand. And soon as we know that we can move around freely with social distancing, you're going to see these numbers gradually come right back up. And very quickly, you should see everything up and running by July. Major League Baseball is planning to come back. Football is planning to come back. Soccer. So these huge businesses have faith in what's going on right now, and things will pick up dramatically very fast.
Mark, if I may just interrupt for 1 second. Mr. President, I hope you're aware, and I'm sure you are, that the GDP in Canada on the consumption basis is 56% for Canada and close to 70% for the US of A. So I don't know, I'm just a little Canadian, but what that means is that we are going to have a bit of a run to get our economy back and running. And I think that the states will take, US of A will take a lot longer because of that big number of GDP that's arrived at from the consumption component.
Right. Well, I have to admit, you're a little further ahead of us on some very major points. You have got a healthcare system that you have an infrastructure that we don't have. So you're going to move faster than us. Again, you have a smaller population. Again, you'll move faster because of that. Your economy is doing well. You're going to move faster than that, faster because of that. So you're in a better position out of the gate. We're going to catch you and we're going to run right by you, but you're going to be first out of the gate. And I have to say, based on what I've seen, you're going to be doing very, very well, very quickly.
Okay, Mr. President, let me ask you a question. You just raised it, but anecdotally, but I think this has been our experience versus the United States experience. We also had to deal with COVID up here in Canada, but somehow or another, it seems that our healthcare system seems much better equipped in dealing with it. Now, we do have a social medical system, and I know we're from here in Toronto, we keep very close tabs on the availability of ICU bed units, ventilators, and whatnot. And relative to some of the large urban areas in the United States, we've managed to cope very well. Now, I'm just wondering whether seeing how it works with social medicine, is that going to change your mind in terms of your own position in the United States? I know it's going to be a big election coming up.
Well, two things. You are right. Because of your national health system, it's different because you're all interconnected. All the information is all interconnected. So you can move information about ICUs, ventilators, all those things quicker than we can because we're in, different silos, different cities, different states. So you definitely have an advantage there. But when it comes down to it, we have the greatest healthcare system in the world. And the reason it's the greatest is because it's not nationalized. In situations like this, it would be great if it is, but this comes along once every 100 years. So it's not worth nationalizing it for something like this. So we're going to stay the way we're staying with fantastic hospitals, fantastic medical schools. All the people want to come here and do the research. And Canada too.
We had a perfect storm for Canada. When COVID first hit, it turned out that Russia and Saudi Arabia got into a squabble, which
Yes.
sent down oil prices. And we're very sensitive to that. Western Canada is sensitive to it, and our currency is very sensitive to it. You did a lot of work to make the United States self-sufficient in oil. And I think to a certain extent that's paying off now. But it is very much important to Canada for oil prices to regain a stable level so that our Western Canada could get back into business. How do you see that working in the future?
Well, I don't see what Russia and OPEC, it made no sense to me. Things were going down and they basically shot themselves in the foot with this ridiculous, this internal squabble that they're having. And obviously around the world, oil consumption, gas consumption is way down. No one's traveling. And as I said before, we've got 340 million people here. Obviously, that's including every age range, but no one is driving here. No one's driving in LA or New York or anywhere else. Once the economy comes back, over the next 30 days, you're going to see more and more people on the road. You're going to see more planes in the air. You're going to see this consumption coming back. It's going to come back gradually, but it's going to come back steadily. It's not going to waffle. It's going to go like this. That means oil is going to be in demand. And, we're in a very unique situation. This has never, ever happened before, especially with oil. Oil's always been needed. This is the first time it's not. But people want to get out. People are tired of being inside, and they want to get in planes and cars and everything else.
To let you know, Canada is the fourth largest producer or exporter of oil in the world, just behind Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. So I hope that you want to buy a lot of oil from us, Mr. President.
Well,
because,
I would rather buy it
we have some oil
from
for
you
sale.
than
We have some oil.
Yes, we certainly don't want to buy it from Iran. We don't like what's going on between OPEC and Russia. So honestly, we would love to do it from you, and just transporting it would be a lot easier, if you know what I mean.
It'll be our pleasure.
So, Mr. President, in one respect, we are a bit different. And that is that Canada traditionally, and this is embraced by both of the major, or all three of our major political parties here, is that we embrace immigration and we actually pride ourselves on multiculturalism. And we do see that the affinity of the American people to immigration may have cooled a bit. And quite frankly, I think it's fair to say, particularly here in Canada, we are actually celebrating our multicultural experience. And in fact, to a large extent, our real estate economy is based on immigration. And we see our political parties still continuing that trend in the future. Do you see a change in immigration policy in the United States going forward?
Well, I don't see it right now. We've had great success with limiting immigration. We've been really tightening the belt, so to speak. A lot of people just been getting in very freely. A lot of people overstaying their visas. We just have to tighten things up right now. But I think once everything's fine, you look at it. My grandfather was an immigrant. My other grandfather was an immigrant. Immigrants are tremendous. That's what built this country. But you can't have everybody coming here nonstop. So that's why we're taking a look at this and we're making some strategic changes. But, as they say, diversity makes this country great, makes your country great. And obviously, we don't want to stop all immigration. We just want to get it right. We want to get it right.
There's also one other very important difference between our countries, and that is our banking system. We have 5 or 6 large chartered banks, and Barry may want to touch on this, but the banks have really been the mainstay and the anchor of particularly our construction industry, but the government itself had very strong rapport with the Bank of Canada. You do have some very large banks in the United States. You've
Incredibly
gone through
huge.
a lot of
Huge
ups and
banks.
downs with the banking system, but what's really going to be important going forward is that the banking system, liquidity, cash in the system, lending, debt, and equity levels are there to support a rebuilding of this economy.
Right.
And you see that happening in the United States with the system you have.
Absolutely. We've released so much money. We've made so much money available through all the banks, small community banks, credit unions, the big banks. We have made sure all this money goes out freely. It is very quickly going into the hands of the people. I don't know how it is in Canada right now. I'm sure you have a great system, but this money is moving quickly. If you have electronic deposit, if you set that up with the IRS years ago, we're putting money directly into accounts and sending out a piece of paper, an email saying you got your money. It's so quick. It's so quick to get that money out, and it's so important because people need to feel the confidence that we're there for them and we're supporting them. And once that happens, people are going to be able to move beyond this, buy real estate, buy a new home. All these people who were waiting to buy a home prior to this are going to focus right back on that if they're not focusing on it right now. And your properties are incredible. I know they're in very high demand up there.
Well,
Mr. President.
Barry does most of the interaction with banks here, and maybe you could share with us and our audience your experiences with how the banks have been dealing with the issues coming up because of COVID.
No, Mark, thank you for asking me that question. I was about to interrupt you, so it's a good thing that you asked me that question. The banks, as they would say, Mr. President, the banks have been tremendous, as they would say, artistic, beautiful. Because what's happening here is that the banks in Canada believe in our model of how we do business, which is, fantastic. And we can get through that in a few minutes about owning real estate. 70% of people in Canada, 70% of families in Canada own housing. So the government so the banks in Canada believe in the model of lending money out to home buyers. But the nice thing about the banks right now, and I feel a little bit for them, is that the interest rate component is substantially down. If you put money in the bank today, you're not even earning 0.25%.
True, yes.
So, and interest rates now, you can lock in long-term mortgage financing for 2%, 3% rates.
Record lows, yeah.
Record. So the other nice thing about the banks that we have relationships with, and they're the top 6 banks in 5 to 6 banks in Canada, is that they're liquid. The Canadian government, and led by Trudeau, was able to figure out a concept where he's putting money into the banking system, which allows liquidity for the banks, which they can pass on to us. So whether we're a condo developer like Mark and I are at Lanterra, or whether you're a home buyer, or whether you're an investor, that is never going to be an issue. Cash will be there. But you have to be careful on how you spend the cash. And my concern about the US of A is that, you know, Mr. President, I'm sorry, I don't want to step on Mike Pompei's or your Vice President Pence, his ideas of how he suggests that you put the money out. But you have to be careful on how you put the money out. And in Canada, our banking system still puts a lot of stringent responsibilities on people that are borrowing money to make sure that we do it right.
And what's very sensitive to us is that people who buy condos today get mortgage approvals. And even more important, and we're doing this in Lanterra, we're closing condominiums for buildings that are closing, that banks are actually advancing mortgages so that we could close condominiums. Have you
Right.
felt with your discussions with any of our agents that there's any problem for them to get mortgage approvals so that we could firm up deals?
No, in fact, I mean, mortgage approvals, all the closings are happening. But in fact, the banks are helpful in that if you have any mortgage payments, they'll defer for a couple of months. Everyone's just kind of working together to help everybody get through what we think is a short time period. And I mean, as I mentioned, we were selling units in Notting Hill, and everybody's, getting their mortgage approvals right now because we require that when you do a deal. So it's been very supportive, very helpful.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I know you have a background in real estate, and that's why
Tremendous background.
but in Canada over here, we can't get construction financing unless we qualify our purchasers. And we have to have enough purchasers to satisfy the banks. So it's really, really critical for us to have qualified sales and condominiums. Otherwise, they don't help us. So it's really very important for the banking system to support our industry.
And was it always like that? So you didn't have the same issues that we had during the housing crisis in 2007, 2008, 2009?
No, we didn't. We had actually a very good experience, and things slowed down in 2008 for several months, but prices were not affected, and we just carried on several months later.
That's tremendous. So you know what? It's the first time I'm hearing about this firewall that your system has in, and everyone's got to be essentially certified or verified along the entire process. So that really makes your properties and all the real estate in Canada much more valuable then, I would assume.
Well, that's why we're doing this up in Canada. Although Barry and I did make some inroads into some real estate activity in the United States, which we're looking forward to working with you.
Well, that'll be fantastic. I would love to do a deal with you guys because you're so smart and your properties, like I said, I can't sing your praises high enough. And I really think we should, make a deal and put the Trump name on a few of your properties.
We've dealt actually with your son-in-law, Jared. He owns a property next to ours, so we've been chatting with him a little bit about trying to do something, but he didn't want to put your name on it, Mr. President. He wanted to put Jared's name on it. So
Kushner, really? Who wants Kushner? No, you want Trump.
Okay.
You want Trump.
I'll let you, giving you a heads up.
It's an iconic
All right.
name.
Anyway, let's turn the
Jared's
conversation.
He's being sneaky.
Okay, let's turn the conversation to real estate, and that's really the big
My
billing
specialty.
title. So before we drill into residential, real estate and its many different asset classes have obviously been very seriously impacted by the COVID. There's residential on one side, there's hotels, there's office, there's industrial, there's resort, and obviously, if you think the world's going to come back, and we do, each one of those asset classes are going to come back at their own speed. The question is, will the COVID experience fundamentally change how we live? And therefore, there'll be winners and losers with different asset classes. Like, for example, will people we're all Zooming, will they say we don't need so much office space because, we could work out of home? Or are we going to be better off having suburban office spaces where you live really close to your work?
Well, I've heard a lot from people about the Zoom calls, and obviously this is a nice replacement. It's a great piece of technology, but when people are creative, when people are really working together, when people are collaborating, that's usually in an office setting when they're together. Obviously, it's going to be a little different in the beginning, but office space and those places, for whatever firm it is, an ad agency, a real estate office, those people need that place. You have to have that place to work and collaborate. You can only do so much on a Zoom call. And honestly, I think everyone wants to get out of their house. They've spent far too much time in it around the entire world. And I'm hearing this from many, many people from many, many industries. And you think about something like, you have a lot of TV production in Toronto. Well, that can't be done on a Zoom call. If you want to make a movie, you need a production office, and you got to be on set. You got to do those types of things. So a lot of things aren't going to function as efficiently or as creatively or as intensely if they're not in an office setting.
Okay, let me ask you a tough question, all right? When you are no longer president, obviously in 4.5 years, right? Would you?
Well, I may extend it. I may be president for life. President for as a nice. I've even said it at my rallies. President for life. President for life.
Would you invest in another hotel?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. People
Are you
love
not
to
scared
I mean,
that-
you've seen hotels go up. I mean, the luxury hotel sector has grown tremendously in the last 10 years all over the world. Abu Dhabi, countries that you never even think could have these super luxury hotels have them now.
Okay, so let's drill down in what really concerns us here in Canada, and particularly our business, and a lot of our viewers here today, and that's residential. And, there's a big part of residential, which is rental. And, obviously a lot of our housing stock is rental, but, and that carries a certain amount of issues with respect to people having a tough time paying rent.
Mm.
Our expectation is that that's going to be a blip because people need a place to live. And
Right.
when they get their job back, there'll be maybe 2 or 3 months where sometimes it'll be a bit tough to get your rent, but otherwise it's just going to go on as before. It was always considered a very safe asset class, but we're now talking about new home construction and condominiums. And we are in the business here in Canada. We're looking into the United States as well, but it seems to us, and we'd like to get your opinion on this, and obviously you do a lot of development, or your family does, that the nature of a person's home is more important now than it ever was. Particularly today, we're spending so much time at home.
Mm.
And you don't know what the world's going to be in terms of things that come flying around. I think people are going to value their homes and the security and safety that their home affords them. And because of that, we actually like the space that we're in, and we're very bullish about it. We are thinking about what we do to change our buildings to make them more friendly in the future world, so that people feel protected and feel that they're able to use the amenities, for example, in a safe way. And we thought that you'd be probably one of the best people in the world to tell us how you see this world going forward.
Well, going forward, I think you hit on something that's very important. I think people who rent right now, who could have made that decision a few years ago to buy, they're going to buy. Because they're going to be when you're at somebody else's mercy, that's never really good. But when you own your own place, that makes such a huge difference. And as you know, as you were talking about, I think Barry said 70% home ownership in Canada. Is that right, Barry? Is that the number?
70% of families.
So you guys are in a much better position than we are along those lines for home buyers, because honestly, when you own a home, you're a better citizen, you pay the taxes, it's a benefit overall. In your situation, it sounds like it's just your cultural way in Canada is to buy, and if there's value, it's even more, it makes it even more attractive, especially with buildings that you have that do offer so much. And you're obviously talking about, moving forward with COVID-19, making sure everything's clean and looks great and is disinfected and all those types of things. So there's even more value there when you can be in a building that's owned and managed properly, and your condo, it just increases in value year after year.
Mark, sorry.
No, actually, thanks but I was going to say, and you probably know this from your briefing notes, that Barry is a very frequent commentator on BNN, and his advice is being sought. I got to tell you, to be honest, that we have a big audience here. I usually think he's a little bit too optimistic, and I'm sure he'll be that today also. But uncharacteristically, I actually am sharing his optimism for the future. But Barry, you may want to share your thoughts on
It's very interesting because the world will probably know, but I was a #1 Monopoly player in first-year university at law school, by the way. But my kids don't believe me. But I must tell you something really, really interesting, and that is that I compare, and you'll appreciate this, Mr. President. I have walked by your main compound in New York, and with your name on all over the building.
Right on Fifth Avenue.
You got it. And I must tell you that I compare Toronto real estate, and I'm going to talk more about Toronto. I compare Toronto real estate to Manhattan. Now, granted,
Yes.
Manhattan and that whole area of Manhattan is maybe 60 wide kilometers, whereas, the province of Ontario is something like 600 kilometers wide and around. But I must tell you that the pricing in New York hit roughly, and I'm going to talk per square foot, hit in a high-rise condo or co-op, something like $2,400 a square foot. Your average price now is taking about a 20% hit. So you're now down to about 1,800. So even in your Trump building that you were selling probably at $4,000 a square foot, it's come down 20 to 25%. All we've done in Toronto over the last 20 years is continue to move up. There's no question that, you know, we may have some slowdowns. And what I mean by that is prices don't escalate 20% a year, they go up 5%. But right now, our average price, Mr. President, in Toronto for downtown products, similar to Manhattan, our product is about $1,000 a foot to $1,050 on the average, and yours is something like $1,500. So I really believe that over the next 3 years, I mean, COVID is a situation for today. We got to live take one day at a time. But a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, $1,100 or $1,050 a square foot is going to be cheap. And we have a lot of great things that go with it. Low interest rates, the fact that people now want to live in their own spaces downtown Toronto. People are now more comfortable with the concept of what a condominium is compared to what it was 20 years ago. So I'm very, very bullish that over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll continue to move upwards. And the other issue is, as you would appreciate, Mr. President, it's supply and demand. In Ontario right now, over the next year to a year and a half, we're not going to have much supply. And I think the demand is going to take over. It's going to increase, which is just going to add pressure to the pricing. So if you wanted me to tell you where I would be 3 years from now, I would take your US dollar, by the way, which is trading at $1.40 to the Canadian dollar. You get great value on that. Come to Toronto, buy something in Notting Hill, or maybe buy one of our other cool projects downtown Toronto. And 3 years from now, I'll buy it back for what you paid for it today. But I'll make you another deal.
It's a good deal. It's a good
deal. If you
deal.
make 30% more than you do now, we'll split the profits, because that's what's going to happen. You're going to do marvelously.
Well, I have to say, Toronto, you know, the proximity to New York is very attractive. It's an absolutely beautiful city, Toronto, but to know that the square footage is at that rate is really remarkable, because I've seen it's a stunning city, and to have that price for a place to live is really incredible. To get the amenities that a city offers, I think that is quite a value.
Speaking of which, Barry mentioned your place in New York. I like to stay in the peninsula when I'm in New York. And
beautiful hotel.
Down, that's at 55th and 5th. It's real pain to make a right turn on 56th and 5th. So
especially now at the barricades.
Tell the cops to maybe like make it a little easier.
Right. You talk to the cops.
Anyway, I think we'd like to drill down, and I think the best way to do this is actually a case study. And I would invite Anne to, to share her thoughts. We mentioned before in this broadcast that our marketing opening was coincided exactly with the beginning of COVID, and we really didn't know how that was going to pan out. Notwithstanding, Anne did an amazing job. But the rules of engagement were different. We had to invent, and Anne and her team had to invent an entirely new way of doing business remotely. That's the banking, remittances for deposits, compliance with all of the, the money laundering issues that you got to do normally with condominiums. And quite frankly, it's been working quite well. We firmed up, a fairly significant number of units in a relatively short time. And our hats are off to Anne and her team. But maybe, Anne, could you tell us how you've done it in a COVID world?
Well, I think you said a lot of it for me, but basically, just before we had to lock down, we invited some of our top real estate brokers, and we just had allocated units to them. And I always give them a list of, this is what we're going to do next, and this is when you're going to come in next, and then this day you're going to do this next. Well, there was no coming in anymore. We had to end that immediately. And together we just were locked in our home, and we created a system by dealing with our banks, by dealing with our lawyers, by dealing with Lanterra and all our sales team and these outside brokers. And we created a system all electronically, all virtually, all that seemed to, within a 1 week period, we just moved on it very, very quickly. And I think you needed to do that to capture the start of the sales. If it took another month, then you would have lost everything. So we did it very quickly, and everybody was cooperative, and we wrote all the sales, and then now we're on our next tranche, and we're ready to do launch number 3.
And Ann,
Oh,
I just
that's
want to interrupt for one
fantastic.
second. Sorry, Mr. President, let me just barge in for 1 second. I think, Ann, what's really, really important here is that it really, it's a great case study because it's telling you that in a period of where you put the TV on and all you listen to is Como or CNN or Fox News, and they're talking about how poorly Mr. President's been, behaving. And I think you've done a great job, by the way.
Thank you.
What ends up
But you may be interested to actually see what we're talking about. We're up in Canada, and maybe tell us a little bit about what it is that you're
Perfect.
selling, why
So
it
can
is
we
so
see?
popular.
We could see this. Can we see this? This would be incredible.
Sorry, what we're selling, Notting Hill. So Notting Hill is a beautiful, I love this project so much because it happens to be in the center of the city. Like, you could get to the airport, you can get to other major cities, Vaughan, Mississauga, Toronto, very quickly, all attached to major highways. But you're just far away enough that you've got this beautiful, four tower building on 2 podiums, surrounded by green, surrounded by a beautiful landscape. It's just, we created like a little village, a little community within a community, because we created a little retail street with shopping, groceries, pharmacy, anything that you would want to do. Like, we were inspired by the famous Portobello Road in Notting Hill in London, and we wanted to create that same feeling in this little community. So when you come home, you can stop by, have coffee with a neighbor, pick up your groceries, go upstairs. You could enjoy, many amenities, indoor pool, outdoor pool, saunas. But the most exciting thing, and this is what really is, for me, the most impressive thing, and this is for me to say to you, you should actually buy here, is that we've got a new rapid system that is going to be right at our front door. And this rapid system is literally going to take you right to downtown Toronto in minutes, like in minutes. But yet, Toronto condos are probably $300 or $400 per square foot more than in Notting Hill. So why not be a few minutes away and enjoy beautiful land, beautiful home, and still be able to get downtown in a few minutes
That sounds
at a much better price.
Okay, I'm not sure if you're seeing, we're trying to get the rendering on the screen, but we'll send it to you after the meeting if it didn't work.
wow.
There you go. So we finally managed to see, so you give you a little bit of an idea of what
That's
we're
quite
doing.
a view. That's quite a view.
Yeah, but
There we go. Look at that.
yeah, so just,
There's our little Portobello.
but Anne, how do you see the difference of the fact that you're a little bit away from downtown and you're significantly cheaper than a downtown project?
How do I see the difference?
Yeah, like how's
There's,
the market responding to that?
for me, there's, if you want to live downtown, you can live downtown, and you're going to pay a price per square foot higher for that. But for me, when you can just hop on this rapid transit system and be downtown in a few minutes, it's really nice to be able to go downtown, do your work, but get away from it a little bit. But minutes away does not affect anything. So at $400 or $500 per square foot less,
Wow.
that's amazing. You're not
That's
traveling.
incredible. It sounds like you get the benefits of the city and a short commute, and you come home to this building which has everything in it. Like you were saying, coffee, and I'm assuming dry cleaning and all the things that you need right there. So you've really come up with a fantastic concept.
All right, well, it's been a while, and I know your time is precious. We do
Yes.
have time for 2 questions, and I'm looking at the chat. Sorry?
And I would just like to say one thing. This is different than anything that's ever happened before. And when you and I spoke, when we talked about me doing this webinar, the important thing is Perception is reality. Everyone is ready to get back to work. Everyone is ready to do what they do. It's the summertime. So this is different than things that have happened before. And I think that's going to make a big difference on how quickly we all recover and the economy gets back on track.
All right, so we have time for two very quick questions, and let me see in the chat. Yeah, Sam. So Sam's question is that we have a lot of folks listening here today that really would like to go down to the States to visit their relatives. I can tell you, I have two kids that live down in the States. When do you see the border opening?
I see the border opening very soon, within the next, either the end of May, beginning of June. I think you have family in New York City. Is that right? Is that where they are? I think it's going to happen very, very quickly. We're getting, testing set up. We're almost at capacity now. It's going to be very fast on both sides.
Okay, now I'm not sure if you're tracking this because obviously from your press conferences, which we actually miss, you seem to be really on top of this stuff, but there is some evidence from the University of Waterloo that marijuana is actually a very good potential remedy for COVID.
Really?
You know that it's legal up here in Canada, and a lot of our friends, every time, they go to the United States and there's a U.S. border official, they drive you up a wall. Like, do you think that any of that research will change your mind in terms of marijuana in the United States?
Well, what's changed my mind is the fact that Colorado, when they legalized marijuana, in one weekend, they took in $175 million. So, that's the most impressive thing. Now, if it has healing powers, I think it even will make things move faster. And CBD doesn't do anything, just is a good thing, right? So I think it'll be a wonderful thing to have CBD oil everywhere. Maybe we can even have hand sanitizer made out of CBD oil.
Okay, so Mr. President, I got to tell you, we actually have a paragraph in my partnership agreement with Barry that I have to let him get in the last word.
You know what? I'm going to be adding that to all of my deals now.
Let me just tell you how this goes down, and I'm being very serious now. First of all, we're in a very, very unknown time in our lives, but we have been through a lot. I'm all of 60 plus, and I've been through, some hits, and lots of good sunshine on the other side. This is just something we're going to look back at in our rearview mirror, Mr. President, and Mark and Ann, in whether it's a year and a half, and it's going to be another point of conversation. There's no question that it's a time that we really, weren't expecting. But I'm just going to leave you with a quote, Mr. President, because I think you'll find this very, very interesting.
Okay.
So here it is. It's from Franklin D. Roosevelt. And Franklin D. Roosevelt, if anyone is listening, was the president during the Great Depression. And I'm not suggesting we're in a Great Depression, but please listen very closely, Mr. President.
Absolutely.
Quote unquote, real estate cannot be lost or stolen, nor can it be carried away. Purchased with common sense, paid for in full, and managed, let me repeat, managed with reasonable care, it is about the safest investment in the world. And that's what President Roosevelt was predicating back in the 30s and the 40s. So all I'm going to suggest to everybody is, we're going to get through this. The nice thing about our class of asset is that it weathers storms. It's good in hailstorms, it's good in sunshine, it's good in rainstorms, and there's a rainbow. So just everybody just relax. We're going to be really good. We're going to get out of this, and probably 10 years from now, we'll have another blimp somewhere, who knows? But you need to have something in your portfolio which can weather storms, and I believe real estate can.
Okay,
Great.
so that brings us to I'm sorry?
I agree with that 100%.
So I think that brings us to wrapping up the program. And I think it's time to come clean. I think most of the folks on this webcast probably figured out by now that you are not the real Donald Trump.
I'm not?
I'd like to introduce you to John,
Mark, by the way.
John Mendico, and John, who actually became very good friends with in the last few days as we practice this, is actually very noted internationally. He's been on Fox, NBC, Conan O'Brien numerous times. I think you do not just a great Donald Trump, but you do quite a few other personalities. And it's been a lot of fun and a terrific experience doing this with you. But leaving aside the jest, the purpose of this webcast that we did, and we actually used Donald Trump as a foil to do this, is really to communicate to the people listening today how fortunate we are living in Canada, how fortunate we are in the industry we are, and how much we cherish you, our partners, our bankers, our consultants, our customers, the third-party agents who make us successful in what we do. And to stop for a moment to appreciate how lucky we are in Canada because of our government, because of our financial situation, and because of the people that live here. And we really thank you for joining with us today. And on behalf of Barry and Ann, Chris, and Mr. President, it was great having you with us. I do understand that the real Mr. Trump's advisors are in discussions with you to teach him how to do press conferences. Is that
How to
true?
do press conferences and webinars. It'll be tremendous.
Okay, just
By the way,
Ann,
Mr. President.
give me a call, Ann. Give me a call when you have a chance.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Bye,
thanks for
everybody.
joining
God
us.
bless.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was great.
You're great. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.